Hey everybody, this is Amir. I'm narrating this video because I completely forgot to record the audio before, so here we go. The Parcel Fabric helps you to maintain a system of record, a system in which you can defend every feature. Every feature in the Parcel Fabric is associated to the record it came from. So if you identify a parcel or select one, you can navigate that relationship to see what created that parcel. In this case, it was a subdivision, right? So we can see the name of the record, and if we press on that, we can see all the attributes that belong to the record. It comes with a set of attributes. We'll discuss those later. But any feature, whether it's a polygon, a parcel, a line, or a point, are associated to the record that created them. So this is important to note. We have the records layer where we keep all the records. Now, the records also have a geometry. You saw that flashing before when I navigated the relationship, and we'll discuss when that geometry gets updated. So that geometry is the footprint of the legal transaction. Certain operations like merge, clip, build, and so on will update that geometry. And if we turn the records layer on, you can see the blue outlines that resemble the footprint of the record. Not every edit operation will update the record geometry. So if I take a parcel and move it, the record geometry will not get updated until I hit a command that does, like build extent or build active. If it happens to be the active record, only then the record footprint will be updated. Why does a record need a geometry? Well, it helps you navigate to that work area. So if you have a record geometry, you can navigate there, but you can also publish the records, for example, in a web map, and then you can click in any location and know exactly which legal transaction happened in that location and when. So this is why it's helpful to have a geometry associated to the record. Now, let's talk about when does this record get updated. And to do so, let's create a new record and do a quick demo here. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit. I'm working on a very slow computer that will get retired soon. It's probably the last demo using this old computer, but it, as you can see, suffers from performance issues. But back to the point. Let's create a new active record. I can use what we call the head over display, the HUD, to do so. I can give it a unique name. In this case, just demo will be fine, and press create. Now this becomes my active record, and it keeps track of all the features I create and all the parcels also that I retire. So first point I want to make is that if I select now those three parcels, I can update the record geometry simply by retiring them. Okay, so I can, if I mark set historic, that alone will create and update the record geometry. And as you can see, we have a blue outline here. Now, can this be a real workflow? Yes, it can. So if you are managing leases, for example, and you have a new legal transaction court order that says terminate those leases, that alone is, we have a record then that only retires parcels. And we would like to also keep a footprint of that legal transaction. So this demo record now retired these three parcels, and as you can see, we've updated the geometry for those. Now, can we also update the record geometry by creating a new parcel? So let's create a new parcel. I create a circle parcel that everybody can easily see, and I'm going to make sure that it intersects with the record geometry we created before. So let's create this circle parcel, and in order to update the record geometry, what we need to do is build the active record. So I'm going to hit build, and you can remove the selection, clear the selection, and now you'll see that the blue outline is the union geometries of the previous and the new parcel that we just created. A record geometry can also be a multi-part geometry if it happens to impact parcels that are not connected to each other. If we look at the record properties, you'll see that it says that it created one parcel and retired 3 parcels, right? So a record also keeps numeric track of how many parcels it created and how many parcels it retired. And this can also be handy, for example, if you do any quality assurance against another business system, like the CAMA system or the land registration system. You can make sure that you have the right number of parcels being retired and created as you expect it to happen. So maybe another thing to talk about is extending the information model, but before we do that, let's talk about the Parcel Fabric properties. There's an interesting property that determines when to update the record geometry, and you can see it's set by default to 2000. So the reason for this is that you might have 100,000 parcels that we don't know where they came from. They're maybe all digitized from old records or legacy data, and we might associate all of them to a record called legacy data. Well, every time we update one of those parcels geometry by doing, for example, a parcel alignment, we would not like to pay the price of unionizing 100,000 parcel geometries to update the record geometry. That's too much of a price to pay. Because of that, we set a limit. If there's more than 2,000 parcels, we will not attempt to update the record geometry. If you think that you are never going to have a plan, a subdivision that contains more than 1,000 parcels, for example, you can go ahead and reduce this number to 1,000. The lower number you have, the better performance you'll get, because we will not attempt to update the record geometry beyond that number. So you can simply go to your Parcel Fabric setting. That's something that an administrator would do, and update that number and press OK, and from that moment on it will be honored. So if you see records that don't have any geometry, that is probably the reason. You can look at how many parcels are associated to that record, and if it's beyond that number, that is the explanation why we didn't attempt to create a geometry for that parcel. So here's a demo active record, and here's the layer, and we can also open the attribute table. The records feature class is just a simple feature class, like all the other feature classes in the Parcel Fabric, which means you can open its attribute table, you can calculate field values, you can join it to another table, you can extend it, and I can see now that if we look at the shape length and the shape area, there's a value, but if we undo the build process, we will see that it will have no shape. It will go to 0. And the reason for that is that when you create a new record, before you build and before you associate any parcels to it, it basically has no geometry. So it has no geometry in 2 cases. One, it has just been created and you haven't built or retired any parcels using that record. And 2, if it exceeds that number that we saw before in the Parcel Fabric properties. Can I delete records from the records table? That's kind of funny. Yes, you can. Those are just simple feature classes, so you can do anything with them. You can select them, and if you wanted to delete them all, you can simply select them all and delete them, just like any other feature class. Okay, so that's just a simple feature class. So here we just went ahead and deleted all our records in the record table. Not something we recommend to do, of course, but for this demo, we can do that. Now, can I create the records? Well, I can create them one by one, but I can also automate their creation, and using the Create Parcel Records geoprocessing tool. And this is something that we document to do as part of the data migration process. So this geoprocessing tool will take as input a parcel feature class, right? So we'll point it to our tax polygons. And then you have 2 options, either specify a field or specify an arcade expression. We already have a field called record name that we pre-created, that groups parcels by their subdivision name, by their tract name. So we can use that. But if you needed to, you can also use an arcade expression, because maybe in your case you want to concat, to combine values from two or more fields, or maybe you want to chop them and round them and do something. So you can use an arcade expression for that. So we just ran it on our record name field, and we created the records for this sample data, and as you can see, they have been recreated again. So this is something you do probably once as part of the data migration process. Of course, you can run it multiple times if you ever need to. There's no problem running it again on another subset of data, a selection maybe of specific parcels if you needed to. Now, can you, what are we going to show here, extend the record feature class fields? And the answer is yes, you can. You can add any number of fields to the record feature class that apply to your business process. Okay, we had customers add a URL that basically serves as a hyperlink to the document management system or to their CAMA system. So with a click of a button in the pop-up, you can be redirected and open the browser to see all the source documents for this record. So that's a common practice. The URL can be constructed mainly dynamically to contain the record name as part of, and that's maybe also kind of a guidance, what should we use records for. You can also add things like maybe the surveyor name or survey date, combined scale factor, units, whatever makes sense for your organization. Basically, put the data here. It makes more sense to put it on the records feature class than to duplicate it for each of the parcels that belong and are associated to this record. So that's more elegant solution. So you can extend it and then you press save and it's saved to your schema. Of course, if you have this data in another table, you can join to the table and just calculate the fields over and then remove the join. So that's one thing. We also have a field called record type, and what this record type can be is many different things based on your requirements. And when you create a new record, it'd be nice if we had a domain value, right? So we would know maybe how many transactions we had of each type of record. So I'm going to add a new domain here, a coded value domain called record type. And we can add the description, but more importantly, let's add some domain code and descriptions, domain values. So we can add the description here. And this is something that would be very different based on where you are. So maybe 1 is a merge, and a 2 is a split, and a 3 could be a subdivision, maybe, or a condominium unit, encumbrance, easement, etc., etc., a land consolidation, whatever makes sense to your organization. Maybe you should think about if you ever wanted to know how many of each record types you had per year. This could give you a good indication, right? So you can use editor tracking query and see how many mergers, how many splits, how many subdivisions you had in a fiscal year, for example. You can even use this to show a dynamic chart in a dashboard, because the records itself themselves are just a feature class, and they have a feature service attached to them. So if you had it published in an enterprise system, you can basically dynamically create a dashboard that shows your record types, for example. So extend this as you see fit to meet your business needs. And once you added the values that make sense for you, all you have to do is to save this domain. Red is not good, so it was waiting to validate that the values are valid. And then we press save and we add a new domain to our geodatabase. Now we can go back to the field and press save again, because we've added a domain here, and it will associate this field with the record, with the domain we just created. And now when we create a new record and we go to the record type, we'll see all the values that we've just entered in this location. So this is a good example. Oh, we're still live. Great. The computer just crashed on me. It became black for a second. Sorry about that. So we saw that. Where do I manage my records? Well, we have a manage records pane. I'm sorry for the blip. My computer just went black for a second. It's really dying. So here we can see the query, right? So now I can see all the records we created in the last 7 days, but I can also create my own custom query. And by pressing new query, give it in a name. So we can give it, maybe I want to see all my merge type records in a certain location. So I can add a SQL expression that says my record type should be equal to merge and press OK. From now on, once I start this project, I'll have this query available, and if I press that, I'll see all my merge record types, so the one we just created before in the demo. So you can create your own queries as you see fit, and you can get creative. Some maybe users might use the records also to manage status, so a record that's still in the works and a record that has been QA'd and finalized. So maybe you can find all the records that are pending some QA or research or something. So you can get creative with that. Now, by default, we call the records Parcel, whatever you call the Parcel Fabric. In this case, it's called Parcel Fabric and records. But if you, for whatever reason, don't like that name, you can change it to the feature class name to be called whatever makes sense for you. That might make it a bit more difficult for a support analyst to understand where the records are, but if it makes any sense for you, you can change the feature class name, you can change the feature class alias. That's actually safer and easier, but anything you do is just a simple feature class, also in the geodatabase, and you're welcome to change those properties as well. So I hope that this video was helpful. Feel free to add comments below, and if you have any more questions, feel free to post them as well. The records feature class is also fully documented in our help documentation. Thank you.